Hello, Creativity Cabin here. I am going to show you how to use the paper technique to block off an area of your pottery where you don't want to put the paint. So I'm going to paint some sunset colors behind this, but I want to paint this cowboy hat kind of a light brown. So I'm afraid that if I put all these other colors behind it, it's going to change the color of the hat that I want to do. So I've cut out this hat from my template that I have made that I'm going to put on here, and I'm going to use this. So I'm going to just mark kind of where it is, because I'm going to take this off. I'm going to need to get the paint or get the tile wet. Now I've already painted this tile and let it completely dry. So even though we're going to get the paint wet, it is not the same as if you use wet paint. So so we're gonna put this hat back on here. So I've taken the hat off. These I've just marked so I know where to put it, because I'm a little OCD about where it goes. I'm going to get the brush pretty wet, and then I'm gonna get the tile wet and just lightly sweep over this. And I don't want to get it so wet and keep wiping it so that I wipe the paint off. I just want it to be all wet. Now I've marked where I want to put this hat. And it doesn't have to be exact for the project I'm doing, and that might be a little lower than I want it. Okay, so I'm gonna push it down, and so see, it's sticking because it's wet, and the paint was wet when it went on there, so it's not going to hurt anything for it to get wet again. I want all of the edges to stick down. So over here they're sticking pretty well, and I'm pushing out to the edge to push it down. Now that this paint is wet, it will move. So I don't want to rub hard on the paint that's there. These spots that are not sticking, oh, that brush just went into the purple paint. We don't want to do that. I'll get a new one. So these edges that are not sticking, I'm just going to get it wet on the top. And notice that the printing on this is starting to spread, but I'm not worried about that. The pencil marks that I put on here and this ink will burn off in the kiln. So I'm not going to try to get those off, because that will mess up the paint that's underneath. So see, it has to get pretty wet to stick down here. And there's a little buckling. I'm not too worried about that. What I don't want is big gaps under the paper here with these bubbles that go to the end. So I'm just going to push these down. And with my plan and notice there's kind of a puddle of water here. I'm not going to wipe that off, because that water is now making the paint wet, and the paint will slide. And we want to make sure that we have a good 3 coats on this tile. This kind of colored glaze or paint that I use does not need to be clear glaze. As long as there are 3 coats, then it will be water safe once it's fired, if I don't do that. Okay, so I have it all stuck here, and I am going to let it completely dry. Okay, so this is mostly dry. I said completely dry. It doesn't have to be completely dry, but you don't want any water on here. There were some puddles, so I did take a paper towel and just sort of tap around it, being careful not to wipe the paper towel so that it wouldn't wipe the paper off and it wouldn't wipe the paint off. So now I have a mostly dry tile. You can see, maybe if I move it with angles, you can see a little bit of color difference between the white that is completely dry that I didn't get water on, and then the white that I put some water on. It's not completely bone dry, but it is dry enough that I'll be able to put another layer of paint on. So I'm going to make sunset colors. This has a little purple on it. That's okay, because I'm going to make all of this a mix of colors anyway. So see, I can just paint right over this. Now I'm not pushing very hard. If I pushed very hard up here, it might pull the paper off, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so our paint is not completely dry. Like I said, you don't want it to be completely dry. There is a little, I have a straight pin here. There's a little bit of a gap you might be able to see on the camera where I can get this under and then grab hold of it and then pull it off. So now I will wait till this paint completely dries, and then I will use the tissue paper technique to transfer the whole picture that I want to do. And I'll show that in a separate video, so that because the tissue, this viscid technique can be used for lots of other things, and maybe now you just want to paint this and do whatever you want to do on the outside. Or I am going to actually use another technique, which you can watch for that video, or you can look for that video also. And you can use this tissue paper technique with lots of other things. So there you go. Enjoy.